But as a zookeeper, right, this is the issues that I had, Is it better for an animal to die out in the wild versus being the last of its kind in captivity? I don't know. It's a tough one. The whole Martha the passenger pigeon was a really sad thing when we lost the last of a species in captivity. But my experience with it is in the specific instance of the Prezwalski's horses. Now, this is really tough because this is like one of the things that scarred me about being a zookeeper to talk about. But we're gonna have some therapy sessions here tonight.
I've never heard this one.
No, I never heard this story.
I want to hear this.
I'm going to take you back to Danny's days as a zookeeper. So, as a zookeeper, especially the new guy, you're forced to work the shittiest schedule possible, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I worked Christmas Day, and I'll never forget the one particular Christmas day. It was, I guess, 2000 or so. Really cold. It was like one of those 10-degree below days in New York City, and the zoo was open on Christmas Day, and there were literally 2 people in the zoo.
Of course.
When 2 people walk through the zoo, when one person walks through the zoo doors, the zoo has to be open for business.
Yep.
So this is where I have issues with the ethics now with the zoo, because the Prezwalski's horses is an ultra rare species that basically died out in the wild and was brought back in captivity, and the Bert had a group of them. And this Christmas Day, they were like, there's guests through the door. We have to put the horses out. The horses didn't want to go out.
Now, where are these horses native to?
They are Asian.
Okay.
I don't remember. The Mongolian steppes, I believe, is where they were from. So it was, it's kind of, they're cold hardy animals,
okay, all right.
But they were comfortable. They were indoors. They were comfortable. It's freezing cold. It was icy, and in my opinion, as a zookeeper that day, there was no opinion. There was no reason for those horses to go out that day.
Okay.
And they did, because there were guests. Well, lo and behold, at some point throughout the day, a panicked call rises up above the radio. One of the horses fell in a bad way and ended up fracturing its leg really badly, to the point where it couldn't be repaired. It had to be euthanized. So here you have an animal that's rare, represented in captivity, but because it was forced out to perform for the public, it lost its life.
And at the time, obviously, I guess they didn't have any indoor setup for these horses, like a barn?
There was a barn. It was a heated barn. It was a heated foam padded barn where they were comfortable, and that's my point.
No. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. Then there was no area then, like the inside barn for guests to walk through.
No,
there was no house.
Indoor areas. No, that was behind. That was back of house. That was behind the scenes where they were stored, because they were stored with some other animals that shared, enclosures. Usually, all those enclosures that you see in the zoos, the big open ones, they'll have these big open areas, and they usually share a common area in the middle. That's everybody goes into that one, so everybody would go into the barn at night or whatever. But here's a situation where, because the animal's in captivity, it's forced out because it's got to turn a buck, and it's been killed in the process. It's tough. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So that's where I think I have the biggest ethical issue with a situation like that. When an animal's the last of its kind in captivity, it's like, captivity is not all that great always. I mean, even in the zoos, zoo life sucks for an animal. I'll be the first to tell you that, which is why I'm not there anymore. Zoo life is not great for an animal. And I don't know. I got to wonder if it's okay for them to be condemned,
I think you're looking at it as an animal specific, because of your experience, and I can't take that away from you. I think to a certain degree, depending on the type of animal, it's not necessarily a terrible thing. Like the golden frogs.
Yeah, for reptiles and amphibians, it's not the case. Not necessarily the case.
Small mammals could work too. Not necessarily primates, but like small mice.
Yeah. But look at the place we were employed at. I was in charge with setting up a Europlatus breeding colony.
Yes.
And it was hell.
Yes.
It was hell because the animals were on exhibit. They were getting, they glass banged all day long. So these animals, they're supposed to be nocturnal, were being kept awake and stressed. And then, didn't have the funds to do what I wanted to do back a house with the breeding groups and stuff. So it's like, there's a potential for a breeding group if that would have been a successful program, which it was to extent. It did reproduce animals while I was there.
Yep.
While I was there.
Oh boy. No, he's not just stroking his own ego. It's very true.
It's true.
Very true.
That would have been a Europlatus breeding program that was established like 10 years ago already. And, and there are some, don't get me wrong. 10, it's crazy, right? 10 years ago.
Dude.
That's absurd, man. I don't even want to talk about that part of it.
We could be having Fantasticus right now.
Dude, we were breeding Fantasticus. I was breeding Fantasticus and Hankelite, man.
I know. That's where I fell in love with Fantasticus.
and that all went to shit. But anyway, and that's what I'm saying. Like, zoos aren't that great of a place. And that's why I think the pressure needs to go more on the responsibility of the herpetoculturist. If you're going to get into this shit, do it for real, man. Ball pythons. You know the ball python deal is fine. Keep your ball pythons. But do something else in the process.
Pick up rhino rats. Pick up cocktie.
I can't tell you guys this. I can't tell you guys more like how much of an impact. Let me tell you a little story about impact. We want to talk about individual impacts on people.
I'm getting comfortable. Go ahead.
Get comfortable because I'm going to spin you a yarn. I was ready for this yarn. Check this out.
I bet you were.
Okay. Don't read the labels.
Okay, I won't.
Do you know who this gentleman is? Does he look familiar to you? Does he look familiar to you? Just answer that.
No.
No, you've never seen him before in your life.
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Behind me, I have a picture of a gentleman by the name of Bert Langerwarf up. And to illustrate what I mean by being dedicated and essentially creating a legacy, I want to give you the case of Bert Langerwarf. Bert was a very well-known reptile breeder in the 80s and 90s. I think, probably the 90s is when everything tapered off. So Bert was a well-known, increasingly, large-scale breeder for the time. He was a very, very unique thinker, which is something that we're severely lacking these days, man, unfortunately.
In what way?
He was always bringing things to new levels in herpetoculture. And it was the kind of shit where I was like, wow. Like, you would just be like, holy cow, I never thought that was possible. Okay, so for instance, he was I'm pretty sure he was a Dutch native. I think he was from Holland. He brought his love of European lizards to the United States. He developed outdoor style caging. I think there's one. Here's a picture.
Yeah, the second picture.
Here's some pictures of his stuff. Right. So he developed this outdoor caging. That allowed animals to safely hibernate outdoors. And so he kept them around all year long. He lived in like Alabama, I think.
Yes.
Where it was cold. There were winters, and snows in Alabama.
Yep.
And in the spring, he would offer these beautiful, amazing captive-born babies from these animals that required so little manipulation because they were living naturally. And they're all stuff you don't see anymore. In the 90s, unfortunately, in the mid to late 90s, Bert became terminally ill. And he passed away. And when he died, so did his legacy. He worked hard to establish animals like Australian water dragons, jeweled lacerdas, tegus of all sorts. And probably within a decade of his passing, many of these animals immediately hit oddity status in herpetoculture. For instance, today, you will not see Australian water dragons around.
I've seen one.
I mean, at one point in the 90s, they were on par with bearded dragons, and as far as like being out there, commonly available animals. These are spectacular pet lizards.
They're one of my favorite lizards.
Spectacular pet lizards. The jeweled lacerdas that I love so much, and I have. This is a species that he bred in droves in his facility, and as a result, people had jeweled lacerdas. They're so hard to find now. It's absurd. And when you do find them, they're super expensive. And so, you see, this is what my point is. This shows the impact that one dedicated person can make in the hobby, in a species' life, in its legacy going forward. You can do so much if you just take the time to be dedicated to it. Do you want to be remembered as a morph chasing deli cup cowboy, or do you want to be a revolutionary and a passionate keeper who was always thinking outside of the box? And that's what it comes down to. And I know that we have that in our ranks as herp keepers. We have amazing people. I mean, just looking in our chat room right now, I see so many names of some amazing people out there that are really good breeders and really dedicated people that we've known, followed UJR for years and are really into reptiles. And it's like, make a name for yourself with something.
Yeah.
I've done it. I'm not gonna lie, I've done it already. I've done my part. I've established something in captivity that wasn't there before, and it's associated with my name. So that I'm wiping my hands of it, and I'm telling you guys to do it. It took me nothing. It was chance. It was chance, and it was chance and my passion for a certain species that got me there. And that's all it really takes. That can still happen today. You can go out there and discover some amazing stuff. And once again, it just goes back to what we were saying, and it's just a little extra step of buying a pair of something cool and working with it over the ball pythons. I mean, the ball pythons are fine. Just don't make it
over the bearded dragons, over the crested geckos.
Yeah, or all of that. I mean, crested geckos, Jesus Christ, like case in point. I mean, that's a success story. That's a really good success story. Yep. It's probably going to easily be the number one pet gecko within the next 5 years. It's going to surpass leopard gecko if it hasn't. Possibly one of the best reptile pets. So easy. The fucking things were discovered in 1994.
Yep.
They were thought to be extinct for over 100 years prior to that. And 10 years later, we've got them at Petco's. And there's something to be said for that. And it's bittersweet. Don't get me wrong. But it is the result of some dedicated people, namely two guys, probably motivated by money. Don't get me wrong, but once again,
is always
it's always a factor.
It always is the factor.
But look what happened as a result. I mean, we've established a cornerstone of the industry, and there's so many other species like that. And not every species can be bred easily and reproduce easily, and that's fine. But if you just end your year of keeping an animal captive with just one more baby, than you had in the beginning of that year, it's a success. If you increase your number by 1, that's all you need to be a success. You don't have to hatch out 20,000 snakes. You don't have to be, Bill Brandt. You don't have to be Brian Barczyk. But hatch out 1 or 2 things or something and be cool. I mean, the rhinos, dude. What did I tell you in the beginning of the year when we were doing the rhino eggs? I said, if one snake hatches out, it's a success.
Yes.
And it was. More than one snake hatched out, but it was a success because I now have one more animal than I had the year prior, and that's going to go towards my future goals with these animals. So you really have to start taking responsibility of our hobby. We have to start owning our hobby, and we have to do the responsible thing, which is establish some of these rare species in herpetoculture. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm just making the same point over and over again because I believe so strongly in it, but it's something that we're going to have to consider soon because we're losing it, man. We're losing everything. We've lost so many easy species. Snakes, for some reason, snakes always get the shaft in this. You'll find more lizard species being picked up than snake species. I mean, look at all the Indonesian stuff that we're chasing now. The Savu pythons. God, Savu pythons were like $40 snakes. Now you can hardly find them anymore.
Ringed
pythons, Bolin pythons. It's interesting. It's these were animals that were valuable, but either they were just too easy or no one really took the time to dedicate themselves. Now they're even more valuable because we can't get them anymore. So I don't know. That's what I got to say, Andy.
That's fine. That's stuff we've said before. We've been saying for the 3-4 years that we've been doing this, and I see people at shows that are trying to get into different things, and it's nice to see some of our breeder friends that are into different things, like our Canadian friend Kirk Riddle. He's into so many odd different types of lizards, and the swifts that we saw at his place. I mean, we don't see those in the States. I've never seen those in the States. We have emeralds and jewels and stuff like that, but nothing like he had.
Yep.
And applause to him because he's working with something. He's working with a couple somethings that people in here, at least I've seen in the States or the shows that we go to, don't have. Maybe in on the West Coast or in the Midwest or elsewhere down south they have them, but not in our Northeast shows. I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame.
It's a shame, and it's our hobby. We're losing it, and no one else is going to be to blame but us.
I wish I would have met you